Hey, everybody. Well, this is one pretty chunky squirrel, that's for sure. Maybe I'm overfeeding them. I don't know. But I do have it on my heart to come and share with many of you some things that have happened in, well, my life, which is His story for His glory. And I've shared bits and pieces, but yet the Lord really wanted me to share this, so I'm going to come give it a shot. So, being born and raised in Lewiston, Maine, coming from a French Canadian family, very hard, cold people, I wasn't very much raised by my mom and my dad. I was pretty much raised by relatives. Never got in trouble. I was always a good kid. I'm sure I was rebellious, as every other child was, and tried to find their way. Because there's only a few things that I remember about my mom. And my mom just wanted the finer things in life, and that was her goal. And I remember walking downtown Hartford, Connecticut at one time when we lived there in the projects, and her window shopping and me holding her hand. And that was really only the memories that I have of my mom. I don't remember much of the younger days at all. And then my dad, who always tried to please my mom and did the best that he very much could. And he was an alcoholic. The only really thing that I remember about that growing up was that when I came home from school sometimes, or just whenever he felt like it, well, I was the wrath of his alcoholism or whatever anger that he had inside of him. And I took the beatings. So I was also told by my mom back then that the only reason that she stayed married to my dad was because he got her pregnant with me. And so, therefore, I really wasn't wanted, is what I was told. That's something very hard to grow up with. Yet, I loved my mom, but I didn't know her. And I loved my dad, but I didn't really know him until the end. And my mom, too, because God is that good. And being raised pretty much by my grandmother, who pretty much raised everybody's kids, as they came from a big family. And it was an emotional, kind of narcissistic relationship, but yet she was always there and always loving and always caring. So at 16 years old, after being in school in Terryville, Connecticut, my mom had remarried as they divorced when I was 9, and I had a brother, an older brother, who's 9 years older than me, but he was off in the military, and I don't remember very much of our younger days together as well. Just a few things, like him making me run around the house, and the stopwatch, and timing me and telling me that I could do better. He was the only positive influence that I had at the time. Just trying to make me better, right? Sure. Okay, whatever. I appeased him. And I always wanted to fit in. We always want to fit in. Of course we do. We always want to be part of something, right? So my grandmother, and I always had this gift. I don't know why. I was a tomboy. I climbed trees. Oh my goodness, it was always kids that were too old for me or kids that were too young for me. So I pretty much was in the middle and didn't have very many friends growing up. But riding my bike, I got on that bike and nobody had to teach me anything. I would just take off and ride my bike all the time. And animals and critters, always, in all my life. So when my grandmother passed away, I knew it. It was like at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up, and I looked at the clock, and it was 3 o'clock. And I knew then because my grandmother at the time was put in the hospital and she was supposedly dying and in a coma, they said. And I remember sitting there holding her hand. And I remember telling her, Grandma, if you're worried about Dad, because she was taking care of my dad, who had many medical issues because of his alcoholism, don't worry about it. I'll take care of him. And she squeezed my hand, and a nurse looked and she said, that's impossible. Oh, but you don't know my God. And that next morning at 6:30, my dad called me to let me know that his mom had passed away. And I asked him what time it was. And he said 3 o'clock. Okay. So I remember going through all those things and dealing with everything that I had to do then. And at that time also, I had met my husband. And at that time, we were not believers then. And shortly after we were married, he left me. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is this the way it's supposed to work, really? It was like, I wanted to be the only one in my family who had not gotten a divorce. No yelling, no screaming, no alcoholism, none of that in my life. I wanted to be that person. The only one in my family. So I took the abuse and I took everything that came with it to raise my 2 kids, mostly alone, and to make sure that they had what they needed, which meant that I went without a lot of things and lived in probably not the best of places. And kids don't come with a handbook, right? So I had to learn the hard way on my own. I remember one day when my ex came home and he had told me that he was going to go on the road, as he was into sex, drugs, and rock and roll back then. And I said, well, you choose the road or you choose home, because I can't do this. Well, he chose the road. But before he chose the road, that one night he said to me, he said, there's a new church up the road that maybe you'd like to visit. God does things in mysterious ways. And when I went to visit this church is when I, being Roman Catholic and raised that way, and definitely not fitting in there or wanting anything to do with it, wow, this church was alive. And things happened there that were amazing, miracles. Things that I thought that sparked my spirit. And that one day that I knew that I had to go up front and answer the call, my life changed completely, forever. I remember the day, the time, everything. And of course, you lose all your friends then too, right? But God. So, before my dad passed, he had had many strokes and medical problems because of his health, and I was going to church, and the Lord allowed me to actually witness to him and to bring him to the Lord. So I know that he's waiting for me. And I found him dead one day. And that was kind of like a post-traumatic stress syndrome because I lost a grandmother that raised me. 3 years later, I lost my dad. And then right after that was in 1984. 1985 is when we moved to Texas. And I had gotten married during that time. And it was a rocky marriage right from the very, very start. I was alone most of it, raised my kids alone, both of them. Both pregnancies I was alone. There was nobody with me during either of them. I didn't have any financial help, and I didn't have any support. But yet, God, in all his amazingness, right? He always shows up. This is the time when I was given the ultimatum, and I gave him the ultimatum, actually. He took the road, and he chose the road over being on the road with a rock and roll band, over being home with his family. And I remember that my heart was so broken. Oh my goodness, I wept and I wept and I wept. And that is when I heard the audible voice of God for the first time ever in my life. And he said to me these words. He said, "Be patient, and I will bring him back to you." And I knew it was the Lord because I instantly, as I was uncontrollably in crying, instantly snapped out of it. And at that time, I gathered with meetings and with other people and other believers and studied under prophetic pastors, and a whole lot of stuff was happening. Prayer meetings, healings. Oh my goodness, it was just an amazing time. And almost 10 months to the day, all of a sudden I got a knock on the door, and it was my ex coming in with a green garbage bag of clothes. And I opened the door and I let him in. And all he said to me was, he never said, "I'm sorry." And he never said anything other than no matter where he went on the road, he was always running across families and just couldn't get us off his mind that God was working that whole time. All those prayer meetings and all those times that those people prayed, God was working. So I never wanted to be anyone in the family, or the only one in the family actually, who wasn't into drugs, alcohol, and all these other things, which I wasn't. I learned from them. I watched what happened to them, and I decided that, you know what, I don't want to be like that. And God made sure that I didn't. No matter what came across, no matter what happened, God was there. And I ended up being able to bring my dad to the Lord. So even after all that time, even if you go back to Lewiston, Auburn today, or if I went, there is a plaque wall at the 24-hour club that honors my dad because he did so much for the Alcoholics Anonymous back then that everybody remembers him and actually remembers me as a little girl. Pretty strange. So being able to bring my dad to the Lord was amazing. And that's when I moved to Texas. I had to wait and bury everybody before I felt that I could be free enough to go on. Because after all, that was my dad. And he needed me. I couldn't leave him. So after I moved to Texas and, things got better here as we were away from all that stuff. And we grew as a family and things got better. It wasn't easy. And I'm not saying we didn't have some very hard moments. Yet, oh, God is so good. I got jobs that, my goodness, I wasn't even qualified for. Yet I got them. And God did amazing things for us. And there was several times that he left during that time. In our whole marriage, 36 years, yet he always came back. And I always let him come back. And I never asked for an explanation. I never asked for repentance. I never was like any of my family. I just knew the Lord. And I knew love. And I had to go through a time when all of a sudden one day my brother showed up, who was 9 years older than me, on my doorstep with my mother, who had kicked me out of the house at 16 and went off to Florida to be with my stepfather. And we really didn't have much of a relationship either. And dropped her off saying, "Here, you need to take care of her. She's dying from cancer." So for 3 months, she lived with me, except for 1 month. She was in the hospital, in the nursing home, but I still went and took care of her every single night, and I would spend hours with her, and she wasn't getting the care that she needed. And the Lord allowed our relationship to heal and allowed me to witness to her and to bring her to the Lord as well. Now that was amazing. But again, doctors or whatever will call it a sixth sense, but I knew when my grandmother passed, I knew when my dad passed. It actually was during an eclipse, and I was sitting there at the light, and I had that feeling of dread over me, and I knew right then and there that something was wrong with my dad. And 5 hours later is when I got the call and went to the apartment to find him dead. So when I saw my mom that night, there was something as I was leaving the room that kept calling me back, and I knew it was goodbye. And it was so hard to leave that night, yet I had to get home. I had kids and a husband, and I hadn't been devoting very much time with them, and a job as well on top of this all. And one of the things that I had to do after all of this, because my brother, who was 9 years older than me, after she passed that morning, my goodness, he was so angry that I got the call and that I was there. And he kicked me out of the room, and I had to leave. I was intimidated by all this, but I didn't know what was going on. The next thing I knew, that I was dragged into the morgue or wherever that's called, and that she had already been cremated and sent back to where she was supposed to be buried, because that's what she told my brother to do, and therefore, I don't know to this day, but God does. But I was so angry. There was so much anger inside of me, and I spent 3 days in my bedroom crying, and I had to forgive them all for everything they had ever done to me and everything that had happened. So I have no hard feelings or any anger in my heart for any of those things. After all, our parents did the best they could too. And forgiving was the key. So those things don't bother me and or have any stronghold on me. And then, after 36 years, and my mother-in-law came down sick, and that's when my ex went back to Maine, which was only supposed to be for a few weeks, to help my mother-in-law pass. And I wasn't allowed to come. I was to stay here and hold down the fort, and which I did. I was a good wife, and I had a daughter who had an awesome grandson, and I pretty much was raising him at the time, so I was pretty busy. And y'all know Jordan. Pretty busy with him. Always on the go, always working and doing what I needed to do. So while he was up there in Maine, even though the Lord was showing me these things, and he would wake me up in the middle of the night and have me read certain chapters in the Bible, and he pretty much told me that I was going to be getting a divorce, that he was going to divorce me. And I'm thinking, that's impossible. That can't be happening, really? So, surely enough, when he called the one or two times, it wasn't too much times that when he was in Maine, that I was given the opportunity to talk to my husband. I asked him right out. I said, "Are we getting a divorce?" And he said, "Maybe. Why? Who told you that?" And I said, "God." And he laughed. Now, this man had seen me pray, move mountains. He had seen miracles happen. There had been so much going on in our lives and in the lives of people around us. And I was always a giver, always worked so hard, and I never distrusted him. And I always believed that God was going to take care of everything, no matter what. So my focus was on God and God alone. Yet during that 5 months that he was in Maine, apparently he had gotten back into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Because when he did come back, it was a totally different story. And he really didn't want anything to do with me. And I ended up walking around on eggshells that was November that he came back. And I was walking around on eggshells for a few months. And our wedding anniversary was on Valentine's Day. And my birthday's on the 16th. So on Valentine's Day, he was a UPS man at the time, and he was running late. So I went out and got a big dinner, brought it home, thinking we could at least have dinner together at home. And he was so upset and mad at me because of it and didn't eat. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. Yet, I brushed those tears off and I stayed strong. And 2 days later was my birthday. And he called me and he said that he wanted to buy me a car. And I told him I didn't need a car. What are you thinking? But his mom had died and he had an inheritance that I didn't really know anything about, nor was I entitled to any of it. So we went ahead and he bought me a car, which supposedly, anybody would think would be, is wow, that's love, right? So here I go posting it all on Facebook. Oh, what a fool. And that's what everybody said. Oh, somebody loves you. Yeah, I thought he would. I thought he did too. And I thought he was a believer because we were going to church. He was on the praise and worship team. We had gone through ups and downs, but yet, even though, God made a way when there was no way, all the time, every single time, no matter what I went through, I just trusted God and put my faith in Him. But I knew for certain one thing, that I was going to be the one in the family, the only one, that wasn't going to have a divorce on my record. So when that did happen, because it did go through, the Lord actually put it off for a while, and He did everything the Lord did to try to bring us back together. Oh, so many stories with that. And on August 31st is when the day the divorce was final. I wasn't crying or anything, but I just asked the Lord, why? And His answer was free will. I was okay with that. Well, then the Lord brings me down another path after that as, wow, I did not know about that I was being controlled narcissistically and all the things that had happened, but the truth always comes out, right? And so I found out about all the things that had happened. And no, I have no grudges against him, and I hold nothing, okay? Totally unforgiveness. And the day that he walked out, I probably saw him one other time since then. So there's nothing there, and there hasn't been. Then I had the strokes. I, and I was born that way. I was born with a bad neck. And they didn't know this until I was 28 years old, so there was really nothing they could do. So having my brainstem pushed up against my brain from a chiropractor before that made things a whole lot difficult, and I was told that I could die at any moment. But there was only 3 doctors in the world that could do this kind of surgery, as they'd never seen anything like it before. And one of them was in Dallas. It was an experimental hospital, and they couldn't wait to get me on the operating table. But I sat there for a little while with my ex, and we prayed about it, and we both decided that I wasn't going to go because, they only gave me a 50-50 chance of getting off the table, and then a 50-50 chance of even living after that. All right. So I could die at any moment, if your 3 main nerves up there at the base of your brain, if any time I'd fallen or gotten a wreck or anything like that, if that happened and anything pushed on it, I could die. But I lived by faith and faith alone, and I trusted God. And I got up and I walked out of that hospital, even though they stood there and told me and played the devil's advocate that I could die over and over and over as I walked out. So the divorce was quite a surprise because he promised that he would stay with me and take care of me no matter what. And I took care of him several times, and I took care of everybody else's kids. I took care of my grandson. I raised my 2 critters, a whole lot of critters in my life. I think you all know that. I've been so blessed with fur angels, I call them, but all my life. But then there was a lot of hurt, too, having to lose everything. So when the divorce happened, I lost it all, but I gained it all. If that makes any sense to y'all, I gained it all. I mean, when you got Jesus and you're living by faith, walking by faith, literally, and he shows up every single time, then you're blessed. And I knew that I was blessed. All the jobs that I had were ministries. All the jobs that I had, I excelled at. I earned every single penny that I made, plus more. But I was always a giver and never a receiver. So to receive is hard in any kind of way. It's hard for me to even think about that, actually, because I could give somebody their shirt off my back. And I've been the same size for 30 years, so, I've never had to buy any new clothes or anything like that, and I've had everything that I've needed. Now, since the divorce, then things became a little tough. And that was, I think, when some of y'all came in and you knew that I had been fighting for my disability, that it took actually 7 tries to finally get my disability. And I was also getting, I thought they called it alimony, but it was spousal support because of the fact that I couldn't work. He had to pay me so much for a certain amount of time, and then that was over. And then there was something in the clause of the divorce that I was supposed to get a portion of his, whatever they get from stocks and bonds and pensions through UPS. And I really had to even fight for that. And that was when I had absolutely nothing. And then my oldest daughter brought me in. And this was after living in a few places, actually, that were pretty bad. And the people that I lived with tried to kill me. I mean, my goodness, there was so many horrible things that happened. But even then, I gave my all for everything. I thought, that's how I'm created. That's how I'm made. I mean, my goodness, look at the king gave it all to me. I mean, how could I not give it away, right? So when the divorce happened, like I said, it was August 31st, and it was on free will. Going through those changes and then having to move in with my oldest daughter, again, another narcissist situation where there was so much control there that I couldn't even breathe without being wrong. And then my youngest also wasn't very loving, as it is written that these things will happen, right? So, yeah, for the Bible to be so alive in my life, believe me, I knew that all these things that I was reading in the Word of God was going to happen someday, but I never believed it would happen to me. And I never ran around on my husband, and I never did anything like that. But yet, when I was 5 minutes late, according to him, boy, did I hear it. When all I did actually was probably stop at Starbucks or something on the way home, right? And or get stuck in traffic. So I was always accused all my life of doing things that I wasn't doing. And you sometimes think that, wow, I wish I had done all those things. So that the accusations could be valid. But yet, you know what? I feel so much better knowing that I never did, because I can sleep at night and I have peace and I have joy and I have everything that I need because I have Jesus. And I have all these critters. Look at this fat squirrel that I get to feed right from my hand. How blessed is that? All these critters here, my Molly, my Dora, my Maddie, my Milo, my Pia. Oh my goodness, how many critters have I had just in the past 7 years, right? That I've been through. And before that, I always had critters. Whenever there was a stray in the neighborhood, they always found my house. And I always took them in and either found them a home or I kept them. And when we lived in Fort Worth and I had 2 acres of my own, well, of course, 5, 6, 10 dogs, that was okay. 20 cats, everybody else's cat, family cats, whatever. It didn't matter. Everybody was welcome. Anybody was welcome on Christmas, Thanksgiving, everything. It didn't matter who you were. I didn't know you. It was all right. You weren't going to be alone. You were going to be at my house. I was going to cook. I was going to take care of it. I was going to get you presents. That's how I always worked. That was my heart. So now I find myself here, and after 5 years of living in my daughter's home, which I am not complaining at all about, it's not a very good situation. After all of my stuff, literally my stuff, and that's all it is stuff. But they're still in boxes in the garage. And most everything in this home that is here, I really don't own, other than the gazillion plant that I have, the critters, and my bed, and a few other material possessions. But I'm blessed. And I'm blessed to be a blessing. And I just want you all to know that no matter what you're going through, no matter where you've come from, no matter what's happened, the key to everything besides Jesus is forgiveness. Forgive every single person and every single thing that has hurt you in your life. forgive them. Just forgive them. Having a clean heart is important, and forgiveness frees you up. If you harbor any anger towards anyone, it doesn't hurt them. It hurts you. So I was able to forgive completely. And being left alone a lot, even though my daughter lives around the corner, and then I have another one that lives in Fort Worth, and I don't get to see them very much at all. I don't get to see my grandson anymore because, after all, now I'm the crazy one because I want to talk about Jesus all the time, right? And of course, they think that I'm medically unfit to be able to do anything. Well, believe me, I'm a proven example that you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. After the strokes, I got hit by an 18-wheeler, which crushed my C1. I already had a bad C1 before that. And then I had the fall. I broke my hip last May. And of course, that really did it with my C1. But there's nothing they can do for me except to put me on very strong pharmaceuticals. And I refuse to go that route. I would rather sit here and trust the Lord. One of the things is that was the problem, is that after I just sat here and took care of everybody else's needs for them, including critters, repairs in this home that I wasn't capable of doing, but did it anyways, because I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength and wisdom, and a little help from my friends sometimes. I was able to do everything that I needed to do, no matter what. But the one thing that's for sure, when God says that He will never leave you or forsake you, He's the only person in my life who never left me, ever. He loves me no matter what. He wouldn't ever tell anybody that I was a mistake or that you were a mistake. He would never bring up your past. That's the enemy. He would never hold anything against you because you are forgiven. And you've been given a gazillion chances, no matter what. And I'm so blessed to have children in my life that I get to watch sometimes. And if you'll remember a story about a lady that I took care of at one time for 6 months. My heart is for the elderly, for the kids, and for the critters. So, as we can see, this pretty chunky looking healthy squirrel here, right? I've been so blessed to be able to do this. I've been so blessed to be able to have a YouTube channel where I get to share Jesus. Now, I want you to know that after the strokes, oh my goodness, I felt so guilty. As I'm sitting here telling everybody that, my goodness, I had 7 strokes. And then I marched around the Capitol in Austin for the Jesus Matters movement 7 times. Hallelujah. Wow. Amazing things have happened. And these were all things that doctors told me I couldn't do. And I have amazed doctors, or God has amazed doctors. He just used me because I was a willing vessel. And I got to testify. And I got to share Jesus with everybody. And that's what it's all about. So when you say that you're hurting or you're living in pain, I know and I understand. When you say that you're unloved and you're unwanted, I know, I understand. When you say things to me, I want you to know that I've been there and I've experienced it, because I don't believe that God would allow or bring people into your life that you could say, I understand, I've been there, unless this has really happened. And I'm not lying. As JJ said, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And I lost it all, but I gained it all in Jesus. So I'm not here or sharing this for any other reason but to glorify the Lord. I am 67 years old. Wow. I should be dead 1,000 times by now. And I know many of you have a story, and you have a story to share for His glory because you have a testimony. It's all about Jesus. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about anything I did. But trust the Lord and have faith and believe in Him. The only way I got through this, to be 67 years old and to be alive for a time such as this, when Titus 2:13 will be parting those clouds soon and calling us up hither. I pray that I make it till then. Of course, you know what? I know where I'm going anyways, and I don't want to beat anybody there. I want to be part of that twinkle poof moment. I want to be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, as it is written, because I've been a part of the Word for all these lives, as I thought that surely I read these things and none of these things would happen to me. A surprise. Only God, He knew it. He knew what was going on. He knew what happened. He knows my future. He's in my tomorrow. You know, the Lord told me a long time ago that He's coming tomorrow. 3 times He said tomorrow. And I'm like, which tomorrow, Lord? I don't know, but I really, truly believe that we are in the season. And I know that I'm alive for a time just like this. And I also know that somebody needed to hear this. So this was really tough to get through, and I pray it came across all right. I stumbled over myself a few times here, but just know if I don't respond right away or things like this, you know, I've got 7 blood clots in my brain. I feel guilty, as I know that some people have 1 stroke and that they're like a mess forever, yet I've had 7 strokes and I remember everything. But, you know, I'm just not always quick. I'm also a walking barometer because of my neck and live in pain, and do not take pain medication for any of this. I prefer natural everything. Where I'm living may not be the best situation in the world at all. We could talk about that some other time, but really not. I'm blessed, and I'm thankful no matter what. I get to feed the squirrels. I get the cardinal bush out in front. How awesome is this, y'all? Could it be better than this? Absolutely. Could I be on a beach somewhere? That would be really great. I do believe the Lord is leading me to get out there and really live whatever time I have left, because I've never, ever lived for myself, ever. I was never selfish, and I never gave for me or took time for me. I was always a people pleaser, always doing something for others because that's how I was raised. And I was told that that was expected of me. Was to take care of my mom, to take care of my dad, to take care of everybody but Debbie. So, if the Lord comes quickly, That would be so awesome. But if he doesn't, I'm going to have to make some pretty serious decisions because I can't stay here much longer. And there's some reasons for that. But I know that God is in it, and I know that God is in my tomorrow. And his plans is in Jeremiah 29:11. If you know the scripture. And I know that he loves me, and I know that I sleep at night because I have Jesus. And I understand any and all things that y'all are experiencing. As I pray for those that have chronic pain all the time, I can relate. Okay, so know that I'm just not praying for you because you told me so. It's because I already knew. The Lord told me. He spoke to me before, several times actually. And I've had so many dreams and visions that I haven't shared because this was from a while ago. And so many dreams and visions that I had to have others help me understand what it was and learn so much along the way. And I don't know everything. And I don't claim to be a prophet, a teacher. I don't claim to be anything other than a servant. My life is laid down for Jesus. He's the author, the finisher of my faith. He directs my path. He takes my crooked ones and make them straight because we all fall short. And I am not perfect by any means. But God knows exactly everything. And I'm alive for a time such as this. And so are you. So know one thing for sure. The King is coming. We are in the season, surely. Look around us. Debbie from Texas is saying, peace out. Maranatha. Forgive whatever is in your heart. If you have anything and any ought against anybody, whether it be a relative, a friend, an acquaintance, any unforgiveness in your heart, I would recommend that you just let it all go. Have none. It doesn't hurt them. It hurts you, and that can make you sick. Keep looking up because the King is coming. Maranatha. Peace out from Texas.